correspondence did for me was make me really nostalgic. There were a lot of things and people from the early 90s and high school in particular that I had not thought about in many, many years. Thinking about this time in our case, I recalled the many emotions that I felt, most of which you can well imagine. However, there was one that I rarely talk about. Repeatedly, people told me that I was courageous. I would smile politely and thank them, but my true reaction was completely different. I was just perplexed. I never felt as if I was doing anything brave. Steve, Sandra, our lawyer, my parents, those are the people who were brave. They had to take the hard-hitting questions from the media when all I had to do was tell them what my friends thought. They were the ones who were usually verbally attacked by the uninformed with their very interesting opinions. My parents in particular had to endure their colleagues, neighbors, and peers' comments or looks. We certainly received our fair share of hate mail and calls, but my parents were able to shield me from a lot of it. Of course, I had classmates and teachers who disagreed with me, but no one goes through high school agreeing with everything everyone says. It was as simple as that for me. But I want you to keep something in mind. That was before the internet, before Facebook, before cell phones, etc. Sure, after the New York Times or the Providence Journal printed an article, we would see a flurry of responses, but usually they were spread out over several days. Snail mail takes time. Letters to the editor have to be submitted, approved, and printed, or if it's the Providence Journal, misprinted. By contrast, Jessica can see the reactions of countless strangers immediately after an article is published online. There they are, at the bottom of the article, user comments. I don't know about you, but I can usually only read 3 or 4 before becoming so enraged and frustrated with the nonsense people are willing to say under essentially anonymous usernames. Then there's Facebook, an easy way to reach Jessica directly without the potential interference of her parents. As much as Jessica and I have in common regarding our experiences with our cases, there is no doubt that there is something we do not have in common. Jessica is courageous. I am honored to present the Rhode Island ACLU First Amendment Award to my hero, the incredibly courageous Jessica Ahlquist.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank everyone from the ACLU. Steve Brown, Lynette Labinger, my amazing lawyer, Tom Bender, who helped us a lot with this case, and everyone else here and everyone who works for the ACLU every day. It's made such a difference in what I've been able to do. I also want to thank my amazing family and friends who are, some of them are over there, some of them are at home. And this also sounds really silly, but I want to send my love and my appreciation to everyone from my Facebook group, which sounds really silly, I know. But I started that group 2 summers ago, not last summer, the summer before. And there was like 15 people in it, and over the course of all of this, I think there's almost 2,300 people in that group now. And that, to me, is amazing, because when people tell me that I'm the only one who wants the prayer removed, that brings me so much comfort to know that I'm definitely not. And really, I'm not alone. I mean, look at all of you who are here. That just, to be in an environment like this after having to go to school all the time, it makes all the difference in the world, because I go from having and feeling like everyone just hates me to a place where I can be with people who are on the same wavelength. And that really means a lot to me. And so, personally, the American civil liberties that we all have are so important and so close to my heart. And it frustrates me and it upsets me to see other people, even adults in my community, who seem to completely disregard them and to think that politics or such things are so much more above that. And for, I'm sure all of you as well, it's a constant struggle. But it's a struggle that I think is entirely necessary. And I think if every case were treated the way that it should be, this would probably be a better country. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see what artistic. I just do this.
So I know it's a school night, and it's 9:20, and Chuck was really short in his comments. Have a seat. I'm gonna be like Oprah. Okay? So Jessica, it's not.
Am I going to get a car?
Yeah, you might get a car. No, Jessica, it's not very often that there are people in this room who get to spend time with 16-year-old brave warriors like yourself. But I have to say, before I ask you this question, which is from the audience, that when Chuck was a high school student, he was also a brave warrior. He was very unpopular in his high school, fighting for kids being allowed to smoke in the school, girls to be able to wear jeans to school. He was a brave warrior also, and I think Chuck would tell you, Jessica, that it gets better. And I think we should encourage Jessica and tell her it gets better. And it's kind of a small crowd here tonight, but there are very many civil libertarians across the country who are embracing your brave path. And I just have to tell you that. But anyway, one question that came from the audience a couple of times was, Jessica, have there been any supportive teachers or people outside the ACLU kind of community that have helped you through this journey or during this tough time? I mean, you're like the person who's gonna raise our taxes. You're the person who's causing all of these bad things to happen to our fair city of Cranston. And what are you doing? Who do you think you are? Have you had any support, like, in your school community?
Well, to some degree I have. I think a lot of the teachers who would like to give me support feel like they're unable to because the city's involved in a lawsuit and, you know, they're part of the school and everything. Some teachers, one in particular, has kind of like taken me aside and said, like, you know, I understand what you're doing and I am supportive of you. But again, I think they're just really nervous to come out and support me when it's such a controversial issue right now.
So Chuck, one of the questions from the audience was, this is the overlay thing, if you'd recommend that Jessica consider a political career, or if she believes that there are better paths for ensuring a just society, what recommendations would you give to this young brave warrior who's following in your footsteps?
Actually, I would probably avoid making recommendations, but I would tell you something about both lives. You can contribute in any number of ways. One of the things actually normally when I'm in a group like this, I ask people to participate by sending letters to newspapers, to call, to talk to their friends about the issues that they're concerned, and don't leave tonight and not do that. That is one of the ways you can affect political change, and in some ways, make it so people like Rhoda and Edie and myself when I was up there, or Steve, don't feel alone sometimes when you're struggling on a particular issue. Being in office, running for office, and being in office can be extraordinarily frustrating. It can be very difficult to stay true to the things that you believe in. It can be extraordinarily rewarding. There are times when you're able to accomplish things, and I always would recognize that it was with borrowed power that folks gave me. But you are able to accomplish things that really make a real difference in people's lives. So it can be a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And particularly in the city of Cranston, you could really help out a great deal. But, so, again, no recommendation, but it is certainly something that can have tremendous rewards.
Jessica, how has this experience been different in a way that when you first embarked on this journey, what have been the extraordinary things, if there have been any, that you never expected to learn?
Well, it all began when I started going to subcommittee meetings that were part of the school committee back in November, I think. And when I went to those meetings, I really did believe that when I stood up and said, I don't think the prayer belongs there because it's unconstitutional, that these grown-ups would understand and would agree with me and say, yeah, we'll take it right down. That was not the reaction at all. A lot of these people were politicians. There were parents there who were passionately arguing that the prayer should stay up. Chris Young and Cara Russo were there, and they want the prayer to stay. And that was really surprising for me. All my life, I'd always thought that, grown-ups know what they're talking about. They know that what the Constitution says. But to be surrounded by these people who had no idea, or at least who didn't care to tell the truth, and that was frustrating, but it was also kind of eye-opening that, even someone who's only 16 in high school could speak up and voice their opinion and be right about this.
Can I just add something? It's just funny, the similarity. In 1970, when I was a sophomore in high school, I went before the Portsmouth School Committee to discuss getting rid of the dress code in Portsmouth. You may or may not recall dress codes. But in any event, and I went before the committee, and I would actually been schooled a little bit, so I had like 5 or 6 good reasons. My last reason was that the U.S. Supreme Court had determined that many of these dress codes were unconstitutional. And one of the people on the school committee looked at me, Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and said, well, we're not going to let the Supreme Court push us around.
So Chuck, what do you see on the horizon as something hopeful that we as civil libertarians can look forward to in this next legislative session? Give us a ray of hope, something, if there's any. I know we want to leave here with good feelings, besides the fact that you two are winning these great awards and that we're inspired by brave warriors.
I'm going to get a little partisan here. What is going on in the Middle East, to me, is perhaps the most exciting thing in my lifetime. There seem to be genuine people revolutions that are looking to take control of their own lives. All of my life, pretty much, it has been an area of trepidation and fear with folks who, at least since perhaps 1991 at least, I was always convinced they wanted to kill us. And watching their efforts to take control of their lives, I would hope would be inspirational to us. That we, once again, I don't know how I feel about the Occupy Wall Street and the Occupy Providence folks, but I do know that a lot of us feel very disenfranchised by the way things have been done. And there needs to be an opportunity, there needs to be an effort by all of us to take it back. That sounds very Tea Party-ish, doesn't it? But we have to find those things that promote each of us as individuals and respect each of us as individuals. And I think we can do it. I think we have the capacity to find common ground. And one of the things I do believe that as long as we don't get too strident, and one of the people I greatly admire at this point is President Obama. And I think he is trying very hard to do that. And I think a lot of us think it's shown weakness, but he has been very strong. And again, I think that the direction he is trying to take us is the direction that will lead to the maximum civil liberties and freedom and justice for all of us.
Jessica, besides getting a fabulous college application essay out of this experience, do you see this affecting your life in the future? Do you have, I mean, you're 16 years old, but do you see this affecting your life in your future?
Definitely. I can't see how it wouldn't. This has essentially become my life, and I really am enjoying it. I mean, sometimes it's really hard, but overall, I really like the process. I like the strategy behind it all. I just find us so lucky to have some kind of way to defend ourselves and to be able to voice our opinions. That has taught me, I guess, from a very young age, that this is something that we should all be thankful for and we should defend. So I hope to live my life as a person who will always speak up when I see something that I think is wrong.
It sounds so amazing. I mean, we should give her a hand. So, Jessica, besides what your brilliant volunteer ACLU attorney Lynette Labinger has told you, when people come up to you in the grocery store or at school and they disagree with what you're doing, how do you address them? What do you say?
You know, there actually isn't that much of it in school coming up to my face. It's more so people in school saying things on the internet. And I guess I would have the same reaction either way, though. I usually tell them I understand that you feel differently about it than I do. Some of my friends even, and we're able to see past that. I usually try to talk to them about it, get a feel for whether or not they would be willing to discuss it. Some people just want to tell me they hate me. That's okay too, I guess. But I try to stay open-minded, try to stay accepting of other people and their ideas, their beliefs. And I think I can usually do a pretty good job of it. I certainly would never yell at someone that I hated them or call them names or anything. And I think it's all been pretty simple.
Great answer. I mean, can you believe she's 16 years old, really? It's astonishing. Chuck, what advice would you give to people who are very concerned about their civil rights and liberties today in Rhode Island with our current political situation?
First, I just want to point out that every time Jessica finishes, Lise goes, "Oh, isn't that wonderful?"
I'm so sorry.
And every time I finish, she goes, "Next question."
Well, Chuck, she's 16.
And I know you've been doing too good.
What would you advise to people like us who are kind of depressed about our political situation, what we can do if we care about our civil rights and liberties to make things better?
One of the things that I was talking to Stephen earlier about it, and I do believe participating in the public discussion. And one of the things that happened very recently is that this really snide fellow wrote an editorial that Ed Acorn thought was appropriate to put on the facing page of the Providence Journal editorial. Now, the guy had this nice title that said he was the director of legal and history writing at some school. Google it, or I Yahoo it, okay? It's a diploma factory with about 8 people, 5 of them students, and this guy's the head of the writing in the legal department. But what really annoyed me, because quite frankly, an opinion can come from anywhere, and the first thing you do is address the opinion, what the person said, but it was all snide. And it was, and I, I'm prepared to accept that really from a teenager, but not from an adult writing an article in a newspaper. The thing is, and I have to tell you, I have probably about 50,000 half-written editorials that I never get around to actually finishing, polishing, and sending. Okay, if any of you read Salt Bellows, Here's Our, I sometimes think of him writing letters to dead people and writing letters to newspapers that I never actually sent. But I do make that commitment. If a civil liberties issue come up, or an issue involving human dignity, which is so much about what civil liberties is about, comes out, take the time to try and write a response. Because it really is frustrating for those of us who are kind of in the public eye and get the slings and arrows, not to have anybody backing us up. You know, it would be so comforting sometimes to at least have somebody write a letter and say, actually, I've had some of these letters, by the way. Chuck Levesque isn't as big a jerk as you think he is. Even that works for me. So, again, that would be what I would suggest. Get into the public conversation. Because the reason a lot of these bad things are happening is because people think they should happen, think they can happen, think there's no repercussions to them happening. You have to tell them there is.
So tonight is a school night, and so I promised that we would get out of here at a reasonable hour, and what I'd like to do is just remind you again of how blessed we are to have 2 generations of fabulous trailblazers here tonight winning an award, and I'd ask that you stand up and thank them again, award them. Good night. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Drive safely. It's a school night.